All right. Hopefully, lunch was sumptuous and enjoyable. And as you can see, all of us here at the front are manically typing away at our devices because things are beginning to escalate quite a bit with regards to this scenario. And the media releases that are coming our way, I'll shortly have it up, will really trigger quite a lot of interesting next steps from here. I'm not going to bring up the media release just quite yet. I need to take a minute or two just to summarize where we're at. But even before summarizing where we're at, to all of the attendees that are here as well as those that are online, very shortly in the online environment, the CyberX team will be posting for you links to Immersive Labs. Immersive Labs has created, one of the sponsors has created an interactive environment where you can practice a scenario similar to the one that we've been discussing in real time over here. The scenarios, and yes, some would argue our SOC team maybe needs to go through that practice, but we'll discuss that later on. But you can get access to these labs. Usually they come at a price, but for attending this event, you can access these labs at no cost within the environments, and the links will be provided in the chat. They will also be emailed out to all of the attendees. In case you don't receive it, reach out to any of the CyberX team members and they will give it to you. Now, you will also see that from time to time, the polls feature will be made active in your live chat environment. Once those are active, please take some time to respond. All of your responses will be collated once the Operation Defend the North, Vancouver, and Toronto editions are done, when the official white paper or sort of key lessons learned document is released to the public. With that said, welcome to Module 3 on Eradication. And I'll just give you a quick summary of where we're at right now, a very high-level one. In very simple terms, there's an organization, and I know we have some new folks that have joined online as well. In very simple terms, we have a company called siberX PowerCo. siberX PowerCo, as I mentioned in Module 1, is a tech titan within the Alberta area. For those of you that are just joining, this is entirely fictitious. They have a huge stake in the renewable energy space, delivering energy across various elements, but also in the AI data center space, meaning multiple enterprises are reliant on them to host their applications. It became apparent in Module 1 that there was some sort of oscillations or, dare I say, anomalous weird activity happening within their inverters. You can watch previous sessions to understand how inverters operate. And eventually that escalated very, very, very quickly into a series of instructions that started coming from regional, national bodies, and instructions leading to the point where Alberta could get isolated depending on how these threat actors are performing within the CyberX PowerCo environment. When we concluded, and I've kept that very, very high level, when we concluded Module 2, we arrived at the point where there were still outages in terms of us being able to remotely access our environments. However, power was still up. There was debate. Should we be disconnecting certain systems? How should we be doing this? We've dispatched some folks out into the field. Work was ongoing. However, as work was ongoing, these things take time. It's the evening of day 2 of this incident, and I'll cue this report up because the media has some important information for us, and it is getting quite intense. The media report will be showing up round about now.
Good evening, I'm Roshan Khan and this is ODTN News. Alberta is facing one of the largest power outages in its history. Millions are without electricity after what officials describe as a catastrophic grid collapse. According to the Alberta Electric System Operator, a sudden drop in power demand caused a surge that tripped safety relays and forced all baseload generation plants offline, plunging the province into total darkness. Crews are now attempting a full system restart of a complex process known as a black start that could take several days. While there's no official confirmation yet, Federal investigators are looking into whether this may have been a coordinated cyber attack targeting Alberta's critical infrastructure. The economic impact is already severe. Oil and gas production has halted, transportation is disrupted, and energy markets have taken a sharp hit. For more on the financial and industrial fallout, we turn to ODTN News business analyst Bill McFarlane.
Roshan, in addition to the impact on millions of Albertans, the blackout's also raising major questions about the stability and integrity of both the energy and technology sectors in the province. The sudden instability has shaken investor confidence and rattled Alberta's economy. Energy producers saw steep declines today, and oil futures dipped on fears of prolonging downtime and shortages. And analysts I've spoken with say that if Albertan cannot restore production quickly, the next few days will see significant ripple effects throughout North America's supply chain. There's also growing concern that the automation and AI-linked power management systems may have introduced new vulnerabilities here. If cyber interference played any role, regulators are going to be demanding answers, and so will investors. Alberta's blackout isn't just an energy crisis, it's also an economic one. And how bad it gets depends on how quickly this gets resolved. Roshan?
Thank you for the update, Bill. Officials are urging the public to remain calm, conserve resources, and follow local emergency guidance. Restoration teams are prioritizing hospitals and essential services, but for millions, tonight remains uncertain. And as investigations continue, Alberta and the rest of Canada are left asking whether this was a system failure or something far more deliberate. For ODTN News, this is Roshan Khan. Please stay with us as we continue to cover this critical story.
Well, the moment that we were worried about has arrived in the evening of day 2. I will inform everyone that our public relations officer, Shelley, is with me on chat at this point. Shelley could not be with us here in person, but is quickly and swiftly drafting the necessary notes, and I will relay this from time to time. Alex, I have to ask you almost right away. When we ended, we looked like we were containing, we had recommended some products we might look at. We had conversations with Darktrace and Corelight. We were looking at things that we could do, and now we've had a blackout. Everyone, especially the wider community, wants to understand with non-technical terms, how did this happen? And more importantly, the end of that media report leaves a lot to question. Is this a technical failure or something more sinister? Can you please advise as we begin our eradication module?
Thank you, Ali. Well, siberX PowerCo is definitely under cyber attack, but it looks like it is spread well outside of our boundaries. What we thought was a contained threat in our smart power inverters seems to have moved laterally to the power management systems of the AI data centers. And we're working with ASO to understand what they're seeing and what happened to the grid, but we do understand that we do have some power blood on our fingers at this point. What it looks like is the hackers took over the power management of the AI data center and cut the power to all those data centers. Now, you think that would be an us problem, but it is actually a provincial problem, because AI data centers consume so much electricity. Generally, one data center is equivalent to a small town of power consumption. When you take that much consumption off the grid at the same time, the grid has an excessive amount of power, and it actually starts turning our power plants into, instead of generators, into motors. Obviously, that would damage our power infrastructure, so safety systems immediately trip all of our power plants offline. As mentioned, power plants need grid power to operate. So without any power, all of our base load power plants are now off and in a shutdown state, plunging the province into power. So internally, we need to focus on our incidents, but now we do have some challenges because we are now running on emergency backup power at our operations center, at our sites. and we're in progress of doing some containment activity, ideally moving to an eradication. But there are now some challenges with the province being down as well.
Okay, I am going to queue you up, the rest of the SOC team, very shortly to bring up your screens. And I know we have a heat map. I don't want that to come up just yet. Paul, you're the ICS security specialist. We had asked, and I know you were not at the table, but we had asked, and you were busy coordinating the manual dispatch of folks. We had asked, is the firmware integrity, has it been verified? Any backdoors that have been missed? And we were told, we're investigating, but we seemed like we have contained the spread. Yet now it looks like we have not contained anything at all. What do you think may have happened over here? Or is this the type of a type of attack which we've basically not seen before?
That's good. Good question. The firmware, the fact that the flat network exists inside of PowerCo causes that lateral movement to be very easy for the firmware to traverse. So if someone gets a foothold inside any of the equipment, any of the remote computers that are down in those substations or the equipment, they can actually push laterally the firmware. So if the firmware contained enough maliciousness, then they can proliferate it by doing live off the land attacks. So they can actually use the tooling and then upload the firmware into all the systems that are related to the power management system. So these inverters themselves, if there is a known malicious firmware that's existing, then it could spread farther. So this is not new, but it is unforeseen for us, not knowing that there was lateral movement that could occur because of the flat network.
Yep. Vivek, if I can ask you, and I know you're in touch also with other board members at this point who are feverishly texting away at you. Question for you, Shelley has asked me from PR, is that should our statement at this point acknowledge the fact that markets are getting hit hard? Do we need to mention anything about insurance at this point? What is our strategy in terms of communicating? What is the board comfortable with getting out? I am very surprised that these playbooks or these templates were not previously reviewed, and for that I will have a question for our CISO. But Vivek, from your perspective, how can I guide Shelley at this point?
I think at this stage, we don't want to mention insurance to the public. If this is a press release to the public, it really should focus on we're aware of the situation. We've mobilized forces. We're focused on containment, and we'll have an update. It should be along those lines. Probably the corporate comms person can help. But we should not have any specificity about the threat actor, the specific details of the inverters, or insurance, or the spread. Like, these are things we're managing right now. But I think that, we need to put a little where they can go for further information. So we need to put some information in there about, I think like Roshan's newscast was covering, like work with your local authorities for safety issues. And here's a number you can call for help if you have any questions. I think the big point right now is containment's not done. So we have to accept that, but we're not going to announce that, and that really presents a challenge for us right now, because we want to get to restoring, but we don't have a line of sight on that yet. So we need to get more information about, what are the efforts and number of points of presence that we have to go and fix, and start to build that checklist and march it down, and hopefully somebody can come up with an estimated date and time where we can get all of that done. So, long answer to a short question, but I think we need to say something, keep it short and sweet.
Short and sweet. Rob, if I can come to you at this point, usually you have a patch for everything, but there's no patch for panic.
There's not. And panic is, contagious as well. And so I think the critical bit for us, both in our communications, is to express, hey, we've got it under control. The reality is, first shot at containment failed. And honestly, often the first shot at containment normally fails because you don't know where everything is, and it becomes iterative. And that's our job on the response and the SOC, to be agile, pick up the new indicators and see where it is. I think that's also the value.
Sorry to interrupt. I wouldn't say we have it under control. I wouldn't announce that.
No,
we don't.
Not that we're under control, that we're actively investigating and managing.
That's
it.
fine.
We want to portray that we've got it under control.
Agreed.
Right? That's the appearance we want.
But Rob, I have to be very honest with you here. I have HR that's coming down to me as well. Alex, as he always does, reminds me about the unionized nature of our workforce as well. There's panic in terms of, do we have enough human resources also to deal with this situation?
And I think the answer is, and we had a request from my OT people for contractors. We've called in our retainers. We've got 3 shifts. It's not necessarily a lack of resources, I don't think, at this stage. We've got technicians at all of our sites on premise. It's a matter of working through the process iteratively to get the information so that we have containment and we can move to eradication.
All right. Well, this is not getting any better. I'm gonna have the SOC team, Shrey. I know you've been in conversation with our NOC and our operations team. Shrey, are you able to now pull up the heat map with which shows the extent of the outages, and maybe you and Alex can combine to deliver the deadly blow of how far this is stretching?
Absolutely. And in previous conversations, we have been focusing about the blast radius quite a bit. And
Shrey, just very quickly, I have Shelly on the line as well. If you can speak a little bit more into the mic. She says she's having some challenges hearing you.
absolutely.
Me too.
Okay, this should be good. From the previous sessions, we have been discussing about the blast radius quite a bit, and this map clearly portrays about what the outages are looking like. We have received reports from multiple regions. Many areas in emergency services are down. Currently, the SOC team is working with the CCCS incident response team and the operations team at the same time. We have the hotlines established with them. We are going by the books. We are going by the templates and the playbooks which we have practiced before, but turns out certain circumstances we have not seen them before. And hence, as Rob mentioned, that we are going agile. We are trying our best over here. Ali, that's pretty much it, I can say. I wish I had more information to share right now, but we are trying to contain the incident. The inverters that we have captured down, we are trying to mitigate the spread of it as much as possible, and will hopefully see green lights as soon as possible.
Sana, I believe you had a question?
Yes, I have a question for our OT team. Do we have power at those sites where people are working? So who is taking care of the safety of our workers?
Alex, you were mentioning something about the backups. You want to chime in here?
Yesterday, our CISO did ask proactively, what is our fuel status for backup generation capacity. So our operations center does have diesel generators and a full tank of gas. Our remote sites have varying levels, and we've reached out to our fuel supplier to put an emergency order in. They did laugh at me when I asked them for a priority on getting fuel. So I guess we are in the list to do so. So I think we can safely assume that we have some power capacity, but that's mostly for management of facility. It is, I believe the AI data center, the processing is down right now. So that's going to likely get an SLA call in short order from our buyers.
At this point, I have advised Sherry from PR not to be looking at a lot of the tweets that are coming our way, the customer complaints that are coming on socials. We'll probably see that once we get to a position of some sort of recovery and restoration. But Alex, am I hearing this correct, that you've mentioned that processing is also down at our AI data centers? James, can you just, for our audience, if that processing is down, well, the technical folks may understand, what does it mean in simple terms when these AI data centers are down? What kind of services are people not getting access to now?
It could be quite broad. There's a lot of critical infrastructure that would not be supported by these right now, but be more the retail processing. You'll see things that'll come out in anything from education, from sports even. Those are really the things that you'll be seeing, but you'll be seeing some pretty large workloads that'll be interrupted, and I think in a lot of ways you won't actually know the cascading effect until it actually happens.
So in effect, you're saying that those students of mine that use ChatGPT to do their assignments will not be able to use ChatGPT.
Or be able to cheat using it too either.
It's the classic dog ate my homework because of the power outage scenario here.
All right.
we have to recognize, and again, this was a big public announcement a couple months ago that FIFA bought on to take up 50% of our AI capacity, inference capacity. And I know that they were running a huge training model. It was supposed to take 2 months to go through. So we are likely going to be getting a call from them, and we're going to have to deal with that. As you're all aware, a training workload can take months, and if it is stopped, it can't be restarted. So we may have to be issuing some SLA credits and get the CEO prepped for a public meow statement.
Yeah. We are talking about our big clients, but let's not forget about the small ones, right? I just got a note from my call center folks, and they are being overwhelmed with calls, with people calling to get more information. Unfortunately, we are doing the playbook of putting like the boring music until they give up and hang out, but you cannot do that with everybody, right? So we need to be thinking about those retail clients as well, and how we're going to address that.
All right, the questions are coming really, really aggressively over here. Alex, I'm going to have to point you to another one. This one comes in from Arlene, who's one of our experts that's also engaging with us in the line with Sherry, and she says, the AI data centers is not operating in safe mode. There's no hybrid failover. There's a lot of questions right now being poked at our architecture. And I know you at the SOC will conveniently suggest that this architecture falls in another team's hand, but at this point, who reviewed this architecture?
That's a great question, and I actually brought this up numerous times, that it's great to have diesel generation capacity, but what is it providing power for? And the AI data centers consume so much power, we weren't willing to buy the generators when they were available, and now there's a 90-month delay on generator capacity. So it does not provide full power to the facility. I'm under the impression, based off of what we're seeing on the up-down, our networks are up, but the GPU farms are hard down, which is inhibiting us to deliver our service.
All right, Vivek.
And that was the CTO's decision, and you were at that conversation.
Oops. 3 times of doing ODTN together. This is the first shot you fired at me. Well done. I'm going to remember the timestamp. All right, we have a question. Go ahead.
This is a tier 1 level data center, but again, it was acquired as a tier 1 regular data center. It's been retrofitted for AI capacity, so pulling out the servers, putting in GPU racks. So while the power systems inside are sufficient, we did not invest in the number of diesel generators needed to keep that system online. And for the most part, a lot of times the UPS type capabilities, batteries, are for about 10 to 30 seconds, and then the diesel generators kick in and give you potentially 24 hours of power. So that is something that data centers are not necessarily built to run for extended power outages, just enough to safely shut them down. Unfortunately, there was a
ladies and gentlemen, I'm enjoying this, introduction to diesel generators, but let's get it back on track. What are we doing to restore the systems? What are we doing to eradicate this problem? Can we put that on hold?
That's fair. I'll bury the hatchet right now on the design decision.
All right, my friend there, you have a question? Oh, thank you for the mics. I appreciate it.
Normally, these facilities or these types of facilities require insurance in case there's revenue loss.
Right.
Have we contacted the insurance company, and do they require command and control over the cyber incident?
Yeah, Rob, I'm going to come to you. You and Vivek were arm wrestling over when to let insurance know. I don't know who won that
Yes,
debate.
so we did inform insurance early, so our cyber insurer is aware, as is required by our contract with them to get paid. So they're aware, both from a cyber insurance and a business interruption insurance. And to be clear, no, our agreement with them does not require us to give control of the incident to the insurance company. There's luckily very few that require that now. That's a universally terrible idea. But they do have a adjuster on staff with us who are, we'll call it, monitoring our response. to ensure that we're complying with our requirements under the policy.
And the breach coach.
And yeah, their breach coach.
Okay. We'll take all of
Their
that.
spy.
Sherry, from a threat intel perspective, you've also now started alerting us to where our attention needs to go to, especially from a dark web perspective. Do you want to shed some light on this before I go to some updates that we've started to receive?
Well, yes. Now that it's very public, you're going to have a whole lot of social media that you want people to ignore. But there's also some, you will want to assign one person to monitor that, as well as the any signal channels or Telegram channels that discuss cybersecurity issues. A lot of times those will be professionals join these as well as threat actors. So they may be there to watch what's going on. You'll have a whole lot of people who are like armchair defenders that will have their own opinions on what's going on. You definitely want to have someone ignore all of that, but definitely monitor to see what other interests might be, other risks that might be coming to surface because of the very public nature of this.
All right, fair enough. Well, at this point, there's a lot that's moving right now, but I can bring your attention to someone had asked me that has there been any additional communications from CCC, and we have received an email which is going to come up around about now onto your screens. Once it does, I will start to read it out for all of you. Bear with me for one moment. And yes, Alex, I do know that there's some WhatsApp chatter happening as well, because folks are not chatting on our teams, and you know there's a lot of those who are trying to get to the sites. There's a lot of traffic. There's a lot of panic, and let's face it. And for everybody here, is while we are attempting to eradicate this threat actor and the malfeasance that they're causing, these individuals that are doing this exercise as well have families too. We have some cases where some of our staff on the field. One has a partner that is at the hospital. One is expecting to deliver soon. There's a lot of moving pieces, and there's a lot of tension and frustration and nervousness overall, which I don't think we can downplay in this situation. Anyways, we have an advisory from CCC. They have come to save the day with words, at least. And they have said, "Hello, team. Following coordination with your technical staff and vendor representatives, the CCC is issuing the following urgent containment recommendation regarding the compromised smart inverter units. We advise physically removing or disabling the wireless radio components on affected inverters until verified firmware can be applied. Evidence suggests the radio interface is being leveraged for unauthorized remote access and persistence. The measure is precautionary, but critical to prevent any continued interference or re-entry while system validation and patching are underway. Please confirm receipt of this advisory and provide an estimated timeline for site-level implementation." This comes directly to us courtesy of CCC. Rob, please help us understand what are we being asked to do.
So there's two things here. I think the first one to address is the stress on people now that this has become a nationally or probably internationally known event, which definitely has, MEAL Team 6 out in force on the signal groups, giving you all kinds of advice and, well, I could fix this or I know better. And that is in addition to the other stresses like family and other things hard on the incident responders. This is a spot where a lot of the leading incident response plans will have you call your employee assistance plan and have a psychologist on site working with and monitoring the mental health of your resources so that they've got somebody to talk to as a best practice. So we are activating that to take care of the health and safety of our people. Now, the other one is this note is actually hugely valuable because what it tells us is where likely the containment skip happened. That it was those wireless cards in those devices that we've kept online internally so that we could work on them, but that's provided that piece. And so this is where we have our on-site team that we already have working with rapidly following this device because it shows us Where he missed the containment will get us to recontain so we can start working on eradication from there.
Fair enough. Sana, you had a question related to IOCs. Do you want to chime in on that and spread a little bit of light on it?
Yeah, so we are talking about containment. So I would like to get some information from our SOC team. Like, do we have, especially with respect to this CCS advisory, do we have all the IOC at this point what we need so we can ensure that containment is completed?
Right. We can definitely confirm that the IOCs have been clearly identified. The CCS team has been hand in hand working with us in mitigating this, at least isolating from every single inverter that's under our control at the moment. We'll push an update very shortly for the same.
I am still going to ask the same question, which nobody has answered and PR is also waiting. What's causing the blackout? Is it safe to say we've lost complete control, even physically in our environments? Alex?
Well, the provincial blackouts caused by the power grid not providing power to the province. Are we clear? We do have some issues internally, and that's really what our focus needs to be. We need to make some executive decisions, and I'm looking at the C-suite on that. At the end of the day, we have a very good understanding that we've lost control of power management and smart inverters, and we now need to start from scratch. So I would be recommending our executives to be pushing pressure on our vendor to get platinum support, so that we can actually start removing those threats. Now, how do we do that? I think we need to work with power ops and get the electrical engineers to confirm that we can just put a known good firmware, known good configuration on. But again, I'm not an electrical engineer. I do believe that there probably needs to be some sort of safety review of those configurations before we consider them being brought back online. And again, we have to recognize that even if we get our environments back online, we still have to wait for the grid operator to tell us how to coordinate connecting back, syncing to the grid.
I think here's the thing, and I'm reminding everyone, is that killing the malware here is not the mission. I am really concerned about potential reinfection. I'm concerned about insider scenarios. There's a lot of blind spots at this time that we're facing, and I get it that this is a work in progress. James, is there anything that you want to add based on what Alex and Shrey have said? Any other priority areas that we need to be focusing on?
I think it all just always comes back to the safety of those that you're working around as you are looking to eradicate and then move forward from here, just to make sure that the safety of the workers, that they're still, we talked a little bit about mental health, but that's definitely, especially when you're working around these large pieces of machinery, I think that's something we want to key in on as we continue moving forward. That's probably would be one of the key things, I would say.
Fair enough. I think one of the biggest concerns that we have, and Vivek, other board members have brought this up, and they're talking about very spasmodic sort of engagements with AESO and CCS. It seems like our communications is just the SOC having a communication and then a random emails coming through. Are we missing the boat here when it comes to our communications with our partners? And do you think that we've spread the net wide enough with all the partners we need to involve? I have not heard, as of right now, anybody mention RCMP. I've not seen that level of engagement yet.
Definitely there needs to be some bridges set up in parallel. I think we were talking earlier about getting AES and other carriers onto the bridge, whether they're impacted or not. They may have some advice, they may have some parts, they also may have some people that can help. And I think that, as we start to go more public with the announcements and the progress, keeping law enforcement engaged, specifically RCMP, on this will help with them direct resources and understand what the timelines are. Because as this goes into an extended state, that could also create other situations in communities and cities beyond just loss of power to critical services. So those are bridges that we should be running in parallel. The manufacturer should actually be on site. Don't really care about platinum service or not. They should be on site with people working with our teams. And I think the CISO is going to confirm that.
Yeah, and so just to confirm that, as part of EISAC has a bridge open, which we're participating in, other utilities are, and for that advice. And so that's generally coordinated through them. And so that bridge is open and we participate in sharing information there. Similarly, Canadian Cyber Center conveniently does include resources from the RCMP and CSC and others. And so we're engaging with those resources through there.
Fair enough. Paul, I believe you have a question for the SOC team. I'm going to give the floor to you, and Shrey, this might be a question for you and Alex. Paul, go ahead.
Absolutely. I was looking to the SOC team to tell me if they can attribute any of the remote access back to a identifiable account that's actually leveraging it for anything malicious. And also to follow that up is with Darktrace in place, do we see any node-to-node communication that looks anomalous? Looking like there's actually traffic, where I said before that if someone's inside the environment, they can actually laterally push a config. So I want to know if we have identified that and if it's actually, sourced to one device or if it's actually grown beyond our reach.
Absolutely. So there are three things. Number one, when it comes to the SOC logs, we've been working day and night since past 36 hours to verify and check the integrity of the logs, and whichever are still intact, we are looking into them deep. Number two, regarding the Darktrace identification for the node-to-node communications, yes, that was the way where we identified the lateral movement of the malware or the firmware, whichever we identified. The patch updates which were released a couple of hours ago was reliable and, sorry, let me rephrase. The patch update which was put about 36 hours ago, it was not reliable at all. The Darktrace was utilized to figure it out that which lateral movement moved in what particular direction, what particular devices were intact, which were not, which were compromised, which were not, and these are the ones which are looking out for isolation.
And just so I understand, this thing you talk about, Darktrace, this was another product which we were supposed to implement but didn't or had in our roadmap, and now we've implemented it and started to track the movement of this attacker?
That is correct. We had a beta release a couple of months ago, but now we are utilizing it for an alpha, and in this situation it has definitely been helpful for us. Now, we did acknowledge that there are assets within the OT network that are compromised. Now, if we can validate with OT to IIT, it might be too much of the work. Right now, the priorities are very different. The priority is to get the emergency services back up and online. The AI data centers, before the meltdown, before the SLAs are breached, which is not even going to be a conversation anymore, that's what we're focusing on at the moment with CCC and the operations team.
So Rob, can we prioritize rolling out Darktrace now?
So we've got Darktrace rolled out as we need it for this incident to get the information we need. We'll deal with what production looks like, what back better looks like after we get Eradication.
Fair enough.
One step at a time.
One step at a time, thanks. We always seem to be thinking that way, and now the attackers are way ahead of us. Board, do you have something to chime in on?
I just had one question. This fun journey started with a patch or an upgrade that wasn't checked. What steps have been taken to make sure we do not repeat history?
Yeah, so here's the thing. In terms of repeating history, I don't even know if we'll be alive to see that moment at this point of time because of everything that is happening. And I appreciate the board's concern, but I will have to say this, that at some point, with all due respect, and I'm acting this out, I'm not saying it in real life, okay? Very odd speaking this way to Vivek. The board needs to step aside for a few minutes. Let us do what we need to do. I get it. Your reputation, your names are on the line, you're getting direct calls, people can find you on LinkedIn, people are finding you everywhere else that you are. Give us some time to do what we need to do. And thank you, Vivek.
I totally get that. Just in your calculus, remember, an extra hour of prevention is better than 3 weeks of redoing the whole thing. So let's keep it.
Say that again if you remember it.
An extra hour of prevention is better than 3 weeks to redo the whole thing.
Yeah, CyberX team, put that on a T-shirt. That's a good one. Yes.
So I was going to say, in clarification, the confirmed patch, and I just want to make sure, 2 weeks prior was actually run through test and pushed normally. This is an unforeseen patch that got in maliciously. So normal standard operating procedures, we actually run it in test, we run it in the environment, make sure there's no negative impact, and then we roll it out across the environment. So this one's unforeseen, that kind of snuck in, and we're trying to figure out how it snuck in and get rid of it.
Yeah, I want to get to an eradication phase here. So, Rob, like there's things we know and there's things that we don't know, also known as known unknowns. And we've been told by CCCS that there is a remote radio management module in there. So do we really need to care how they got in versus we know they're in? And the CCCS and obviously our intelligence community is saying it is that remote device.
Right. And so exactly. And so again, what's the now problem and the future me problem? And the now problem is, as folks have said, we've got to get this thing back up and running. We could pause and spend all weeks solving the whodunit, but then we won't exist and it'll be a moot point anyways. And so really it is now we know the persistence happens through the radio, have our on-site people following the directions from the manufacturer on how we disable this radio. Depending on the device, it might be pulling at a card, it might be jumpering some pins together, whatever needs to be done to do the disablement. And then in parallel, we're confirming that the new patch we have is correct and valid, and coming up with the rapid deployment plan with our engineering team to say, hey, which testing steps can we skip given where we are right now so we can get this new one deployed as expeditiously as possible. But you're right, in the short term, follows directions, fix those radios and move on.
What about the warranty?
So that's one I'm going to refer to my friend, the general counsel, who can chase that after the fact. They'll have lots of fun in litigation for the next 20 years on that one. But again, that's a future me problem. The now me problem is power's off and needs to be back on.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt. Another right now problem is about how to deal with other law enforcement agencies as well. We are talking about Canada, RCMP, but don't forget that our company operates in the US and is listed in the stock markets there. So we have, by the Sarbanes-Oxley, an obligation to notify the FBI for a security incident like that of 48 hours. So we are on the top of that. Regardless if you are going with our internal PR, external PR, retainer, we must be prepared to communicate very soon to our partners down the south.
All right, well, I can tell you we have about, how long is it? I'll keep a track of time over here. We have around about 15 minutes to go, actually 20 minutes to go as we come closer and closer to eradication. But I will let you know, Sana, you did send a note to me saying that no external communications should be going out without review. Sherry has sent me her statement that we're planning to put on the website for now and just issue out as a bulletin, and it reads as such. I'll just read it out because I don't have it to show you on the screen. It states, CyberX PowerCo has been impacted by a potential cyber attack. At this point, we are aware of service outages across the Alberta region, and we are working with our partners to restore services as soon as we can. Thank you for your patience during this time. Sana, you're leading the incident side of things. Any concerns with this messaging? We have not yet put out any statements.
So first of all, do we have confirmation that legal has reviewed this?
Nope.
And have we reach out to our immediate partners through which we have very strict SLAs, for example, AI data center, before communicating to the public? This type of information should not reach to those partners through public or through media. We should be proactive with respect to our communication. And the other thing is it has to be approved by legal and the advisory board as well.
Fair enough. My bigger concern is I'm having to explain to communications what an SLA means. but that is a separate discussion altogether. SOC team, I think you've got some more spice to add to the bad news, so I'm going to turn it over to you, and I believe you want to share your screen as well. I will give you the power.
Absolutely. So earlier in the discussions, we had suspicions towards the firmware. We had suspicions looking at certain amount of logs, and one of the role which SOC plays is verify these things. We don't just play on suspicion. We don't just play on people pointing out that, hey, this could be it. We find it, what that is exactly the scene. Over here on the screen, you will be able to see the version 2.14.7 for one of the inverter patch releases. The SHAs are not matching. Now, what are these SHAs? They are the unique signatures toward the software releases which we make internally and towards what they receive externally. The external vendor who confirmed that they released a patch, but they did not validate it, they did not authorize it, and the reports which I have received, they clearly state that the patch release which was installed on these inverters is not the one which vendor provided. They are different ones. The SHAs are not matching at all. The firmware's last update came from an untrusted remote API, a non-vendor IP. The hash mismatch confirms this was a rogue firmware push, possibly exploiting the same management interface which we saw earlier during our conversations. At this point, the team has enough evidence of supply chain compromise within the operation environment.
Okay. Alex, do you want to break that down a little bit more? Because I have the board now in the war room, and not just Vivek, but many others who can spell cyber, but not more than that. And that red line there and hash mismatch detected, etc., is causing a lot of concern.
Well, it certainly indicates that what we believed happened, which was an unauthorized bit of firmware put on our electrical system, is not supported by the vendor and likely hostile. As Rob said, this is not the time to be solving the murder mystery. It is to move forward and focus on eradication and subsequently recovery. What we need to figure out now, and I want to pull Paul and Rob into this, is we've got 20 solar and wind farms that have inverters on them, and we've got 6 AI data centers with power management systems. I believe we have 20 techs available to us, though the WhatsApp group said that they're just going to stay home. It's not their problem anymore. And we've got 10 electrical engineers that need to do the sort of validation of whatever work is being done. So there's driving time getting to all these different sites. There's the change time to get the firmware on it, to then have the electrical engineer validate and sign off on it. Likely they're going to need to do some sort of risk assessment on these systems. So what, Paul, to you first, like what would be the minimum viable product for getting these types of power management systems to a state that an electrical engineer would be able to sign off on, and we'd be ready to bring up our data centers, which I think the CEO wants, but also be ready to sync back to the grid when ASO asks us to?
Yeah, for sure. So I would go and get the techs to look at each individual farm to see if they have any spare parts. So if we actually have backups with a previous firmware version on it that we can actually decommission, pull those out, there's enough power coming from the diesel engines to actually get those up and get them viable again. So we'd start cold starting some of these facilities that we have the spare parts, the last known good firmware. That way we can take those other inverters that have the bad firmware on it and put it in test mode so that we can actually flash them with the new firmware if we want to go down that path and make sure that it sticks. Of course, we want to do this once the radios are decommissioned so that we don't live through this nightmare again. But that's what I would propose. So then we can do, slowly roll them up and get at least some of the grid back up and running.
Does that align with you, Rob, and your processes?
Yeah, and that's sort of the plan is, we have the techs first, if we've got spares, disabling the radios on those because they're offline, so it's easy to do. Yep. We don't need engineering to help with that. And then let's get the plan, and the team has worked on a remediation plan that is now in front of the engineer for stamping. So once the engineers reviewed that plan and stamped it, that can now be done at every site by the techs without an engineer in place. They can implement that plan. So that we hope to have done in the next couple hours. And so that will allow us to start deploying the spares and re-enabling the wind turbines. And then we can work on power management because there's no point in doing power management when there's no power to go into them.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
You have a question? Yep. We'll take his and then yours.
So can we set aside an inverter for the forensics team to review?
It's a similar question from Beatrix as well. Thank you for that, Mohsin. I'll read it out, and if you can, we'll answer this question, and then you can pass the mic over to the gentleman there. Beatrix also asked Alex, or whoever wants to take this, is there an inverter that can be set aside for investigative forensics while the power gets back on?
So it won't likely happen while the power's not back on because all our people who'd be in the forensics are kind of busy. But definitely, in the process of using spares, there will be a leftover we can set aside and the manufacturer, obviously RCMP and a whole bunch of others will be very interested in that device. But that's a shortly problem, not a now problem.
Probably something that will come into recovery, the recovery module. Go ahead.
Just I want to add, like, we will be taking the backup of those inverters, like configurations. So we have those forensics available for future.
So let's add that task to the technician's task list, that they do need to do a backup beforehand. Let's also make sure that they've got 2 laptops, clean one, dirty one. Who knows what this firmware is and is not, but certainly we do not want to extend this module too much longer and have a reinfection from moving USB sticks around.
Yeah, ask them as well to keep the chain of custody because this can potentially be a crime scene. So we need to make sure that we have that properly handled. Otherwise, you'll be in trouble as well.
Interesting. There's a lot of moving parts that are happening right now, and I'm refraining from commenting too much. But anyways, go ahead. Question.
I have a
Ooh.
I have a question for Rob. So Rob, you mentioned that you have short-term and long-term eradication recovery plans. So I was wondering, what is, as a chief information security officer, what is your plan for the next cybersecurity strategic plan, adjustment plan? Like, are you going to be including this incident in your cybersecurity audit? And how are you going to go with actually figure out a whodunit that Alex mentioned? How do you say it? Not allowing this incident to happen in the future. And also the hash mismatch suggests that the problem is maybe on side of the manufacturer. From my understanding, that's Honeywell. Is that so? What is the role Honeywell as well going to take in figuring out this?
So I think the answer to a lot of questions come from our post-incident report and lessons learned afterwards. So after the incident, that's when we can review all the forensics, dig through the devices, and figure out reconstruct what happened and how. And that would include, for example, working with Honeywell to look at that full chain. It would include things like what were the political, emotional, other factors that contributed to us making the poor decisions that led up to this. Why did we make the poor decision not to have adequate diesel generation? Why did we make the poor decision to architect a flat network? What were the factors that went into that decision making so that we can correct that and make less crappy decisions going forward?
I'd like to add, as to the whodunit, right now our priority is safe operations, but thank you for pulling that up. CCCS actually sent out earlier this an alert for the smart inverters with the IOCs, and the IOC, the malware or the firmware version matches that, which means that CCCS and the FBI and RCMP are actually already on this. And so what we can do is we can share information about our incident, and so that can help get to the bottom of the whodunit, but we can leave the whodunit to the people who are good at that, and that is law enforcement.
Okay, again, I see another question. Yeah, please go ahead.
I guess I'm referring back to Module 1, and this question is for the SOC lead as well as the panel themselves. I noticed that the mention of the hash didn't match when it came to the firmware version was mentioned, but can we focus back upon who was on the change management committee who approved the change in the first place and didn't raise a red flag then? Could this be more of an insider threat that we haven't taken into account as we go about our changes?
Yes. What I can say to that is that the fact that there was a change, that we pushed new firmware a couple weeks ago and now we have an incident, is that correlation without necessarily causation. What we don't, and there's a lot we don't know, right? So we can jump to conclusions all we want, and that actually can cause us to sort of steer ourselves off onto a tangent that actually blinds us from really focusing on what's actually important. In this case, because there's a likelihood that the radio module was actually the backdoor and it wasn't used to attack, we decided to go down a route of looking at logs and looking at these change management, an actual change window. And that actually, really distracted us from looking at potentially other data. And that's something that we need to be cognizant of when we are doing investigations, that we have cognitive biases, and we generally, the confirmation bias is one that, saturates a SOC, that they see the data, they are going to look for more data that validates that assumption. And, in this scenario that we put together is we throw a lot of information in that may be totally irrelevant, and it misleads us, it misleads the audience, and it's, realistic, from several experiences of chasing, ghosts in the log files.
And one thing to add over here, when it comes to hash matching, version spoofing is actually, in reality, one of the hardest attacks to catch, because when you see version, let's say 2.14.7 on the screen, earlier which was on the screen, when we initially see from a firmware level, it's visible as 2.14.7. The hashes are not visible right over there. The cryptographic hashes are measured somewhere else entirely. The data is available somewhere else entirely. And as we pointed out earlier as well, the forensics team, when they investigate untampered logs, that is a raw version of the entire computer system, that's only when they are able to figure out that the version release which was made onto the server, which is in this case the smart inverter, that can only be caught once it is in person in real time. It cannot be done remotely, it cannot be done without a manual intervention as we did over here. So that's one of the reasons why the smoking gun was not visible or caught earlier, else it would have been much, much faster.
All right. I see another question. I'll take one more, and then we have about 8 minutes to wrap up and come closer to our eradication. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. So to operate the inventors, do they need to have internet access? Because I saw that there was a connection between those devices and the C2 servers. I just wanted to make sure if they actually need to have internet access to operate.
I think no. I think one of the mistakes we made as we build back will correct is we had internet access enabled because it was more convenient. Essentially, sometime in the past, somebody trying to troubleshoot, put the hole in the firewall to fix it with the intent, I think, to go back and plug that hole later. The beauty about saying you'll do something later is, well, you're never late, are you? Right? So that didn't get fixed. And so those are some of the things we'll fix as we get through the restoration phase after eradication.
All right, fair enough. Thank you all. I appreciate all of the questions. At this point, we have a good sense of the blast radius and all the impact that this is resulting in. I will tell you, when we go into the next module, the complaints that are starting to flood in and how are we going to recover from all of this will be the focus of the conversation. I can see that on the chat online, and Alex, this one is for you, but it'll be an interesting one when we have Kimberly from Splunk here. A lot of questions on attribution that are coming up. A lot of folks are tuning in to ODTN.news as well and are beginning to see a bit of a narrative there. So good on you. But right now, with about 6 minutes to go, I'm going to have my screen pop up very shortly. And this is an email that has come in from the vendor with regards to the patch. And I'll read it out in summary for all of you. Hello, SPC team. GridSense has finalized and verified a secure firmware patch to replace the unauthorized software identified. The update restores systems to approved operational settings and adds new integrity checks to prevent further compromise. We recommend applying the patch across affected sites in coordination with AESO to ensure stability during reactivation. Please confirm deployment order and timelines. Our support engineers are on standby to assist with installation, monitoring, and post-patch validation. Secure download credentials have been issued to your technical lead through your encrypted portal. Thank you for your partnership in restoring safe and reliable grid operations. Our comms team have also been copied on this, and they have a very simple question. And this might be a question that I might bring to our ICS folks, or maybe even the SOC team if you want to chime in. But Paul, I'll bring this question to you. Comms is just asking one question. If they have a patch for this now, how did this attack even happen in the first place? Is it someone on the inside? Comms doesn't still understand. They're getting a lot of questions. The vendor seems to be speaking to us like they did nothing wrong. They're trying to evade from fingers being pointed at them. But comms asks a relevant question.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I'll take a stab at it and then turn it over to the SOC team. So understanding where the breach occurred, like we said before, it could have left open doors for internet connectivity so we could do advanced process control, get the telemetry off the inverters so we can do better performance management, better energy management. If that happened to open a hole where the attacker could slip through, that's potentially it. If it's a insider threat, really we have to go back to the logs and the SOC team to understand if there's an account that's associated with that remote activity. If it's an ongoing linkage where someone can slip through their account and they're actually spoofing that account to get into the environment, it's up to the SOC team to do the forensics and give us kind of that data back for us to do a little bit more incident response on it.
I think getting the vendor patch, a new firmware is a good step that sort of removes some of the ambiguity of like, are we doing it right? Are we restoring to last known good, and is that good, or is that just another vulnerable firmware? So having their support is really good. The email doesn't really talk about what it's fixing. So does that actually address the recommendation that CCCS did, which was to physically remove the radio module? Perhaps this patch is disabling it. It's unclear. So that's actually something I'll pass back to the CISO is, that's the fork in the road. Do we just blindly trust this patch and not listen to CCCS on their recommendation, or somewhere in between?
So we already started disabling the radios. The radios are already disabled, which we did immediately after CCCS. So that's a moot point. Okay. We can proceed with the patch, and then at a later point, after discussing with the vendors, if we wish to re-enable the radios down the road, we can cross that bridge later. To get your question for comms, which nobody actually answered, the answer that comms should be is we don't know. To comms, it is we don't know yet. The message is we're working with the manufacturer of the equipment, the Canadian Cyber Center, and outside experts. We will investigate the cause in due course, but right now the focus is on restoring service.
Fair enough, but I will also add that our CEO has now also sent me notes saying that some of the regulators have, over a phone call conversation, mentioned, and I'll read verbatim the message that I got, is the regulators have said that they've lost a little bit of confidence in our approach because of some missing documentation, some rushed sign-offs, and lack of transparency. Is this something that resonates with what we're going through right now?
I mean, ultimately, it's a challenge to maintain transparency. Particularly when some key folks like the CTO, who'd be doing a lot of that communication, seems to be, fat and happy somewhere enjoying a steak dinner. And so there are clearly gaps in our executive crisis management, which is, right now the instance being handled technically. There's that other layer of corporate crisis management that takes care of regulators and shareholders and investors and public communications that has to work in concert. It seems that corporate crisis management, that tabletop we scheduled to do with them last year that canceled, maybe that canceling is biting us.
Fair enough. Alex, I'll have to come back to you with the final statements here. If deploying this firmware, if successful, is it fair to say that this will help our eradication efforts to a large extent and restore some normalcy to our operations?
What we know, yes. Again, we do need to be continuously monitoring our infrastructure to make sure that we have caught everything. If we recall, we were very confident that we contained the issue and subsequently found out that other systems had been compromised and we weren't even looking at them, which then caused a little bit more of the blast radius to expand. So we should continue to keep monitoring. I think the MVP, minimum viable product, for rolling out the new firmwares and readying our systems for business resumption is what we need to start following. Again, we're resource constrained, both from a technician and electrical engineer perspective. So deployment is not going to be as fast as we hope because there's a lot of physical distance between all these sites. But having a trusted firmware is solid. And just, I think the only other thing I'm going to add is, like, perhaps for a couple of the critical sites, we should have somebody from the security operations team escorting them so that we actually do follow that chain of custody protocol. We can't expect our electrical technicians and engineers to know what that is even, what that means.
If this patch disables the radio, any impacts to us operationally?
That's a great question. I would escalate to the vendor on that, but I don't know if we want to tell them that we're ripping stuff out of their stuff, because then we're going to impact our warranty.
Fair enough. All right. With that, at this point, I want to remind everybody that we are into late day 2, and we will be preparing now to go into module 4, which will be the recovery. I'll remind you that the recovery will start late into day 4, which realistically tells you, in fact, in my opinion, probably is even way too fast, but for the context of this exercise, from day 2, we're now all the way in module 4, going to be at day 4. Before I invite you to take a short break and invite you to join us for module 4 and then a short closing, you will see on the screens right now, there is an economic impact counter that has been put up there. This economic impact counter will be very significant to the recovery and restoration phases that we discuss. There's been a lot of questions online about who done it and attribution, and that will come up when we go deeper into module 4. Erasing or all of these deletions can also result in a lot of evidence being erased as well. So we will proceed very carefully and calmly as we go into the restoration and recovery phase. With that, you probably need some time to recover from all of these conversations. We'll see you back at 2:45 with module 4 and then a very short closing session. Thank you so very much.